Welcome to the Oak and Pine Podcast, a safe space to learn and grow together. Hi, I'm Lala. I'm of the Black Indigenous people of the Eastern United States, and I'm reconnecting with my roots by way of hoodoo.
Hi, my name is Connor, and I practice traditional British Gardnerian Wicca.
Hi, I am AB. I am an eclectic witch originally from Venezuela.
Now,
Now,
let's
Let's get
get witchy.
witchy. This is
We
another
are
culture.
terrible. No, we're getting
At some
better.
point, it's gonna
That's
happen.
okay. It's our
Yes, I
thing.
love it. It's
It's
our
our
thing.
thing. It's our thing.
Yes, it's our thing by now. So I am so glad to see the both of you because as always, our time together is always refreshing and I always look forward to it. So how have you been, Connor?
I've been doing pretty good. Went through a bit like a little bit of like a health crisis in terms of like, well, not like a crisis, but I got fucking sick. I got a virus.
It was a
Um,
crisis, I
it was a
swear.
crisis. Ah!
Yeah. Yeah, you were
yeah,
down
it
for a while.
yeah, I was down for like a little over a week. With like a real bad sore throat. I needed like pain meds in order to like eat food. It was that bad. So yeah, but I'm better now. And I'm just doing my own thing, getting back into my routine. How are you doing, guys?
I'm
Oh, I
great.
broke down too.
So how are you, AB? Like, fill us in. How
Oh
have
no,
you
I
been?
broke down too, but it wasn't. It was not a. It was not a flu. I broke down.
Right.
Those high and lows that we have in life, and
Yeah.
that was just a low. But I'm definitely doing better, and I'm very thankful. Of my friends that supported me, my family, and yeah,
Yes.
good
I
opportunities
love
coming
that.
in.
I love that you can be candid like that because I think when people are practitioners, even if whether you're a brujeria practitioner, a druid, hoodoo, priest, or reverend, high priestess, that doesn't make everything okay all the time. We are still humans and we still will have downs. And I think that's good that, you shared that. And first of all, you recognized it
Mm-hmm.
and you did something about it so you can be in a better space. So
Yeah.
I love it.
I just think that it's good to speak about it because it normalizes it. The
Yes.
idea is to normalize the, hey, I'm not having a good time. I need, to get support. I need to get my therapist. I have a
Yes.
wonderful support system. Again, I keep saying my husband is doing everything. Actually, he was the one that I'm not dealing with this. You are going to get better.
Yes.
Let's talk with the therapist and let's walk around in the park. Let's get let's take a proactive
Yes.
step on improving. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's why it's important to have also a good support system on that side.
And I was
Absolutely.
gonna
Yeah.
say, oh my gosh, what a dream husband, because that's exactly what your spouse should do. Your spouse should say, hey, I'm not gonna take this on by myself. I love you, I'm here to support you. But there are people that are meant to help you in these situations,
Absolutely.
professionals. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
look at y'all. I am jealous. Look at you glowing over there. But no, that's wonderful. I'm so
oh.
grateful.
I'm blushing.
Yes, yes. Wow, he is awesome.
He
So,
is
but no, you
perfect.
look good. You look good. We're glad to see you doing good and you're back. I mean, you both look good, so
Thank you. Oh.
everybody's doing better. That's right. That is right. We are excited. We are super excited to continue this podcast. And today we are dedicating this episode to our ancestors. So, whether you want to call it ancestral veneration or honoring the ancestors, we are going to be speaking about our ancestors today. How do you guys feel about this?
Great.
Feel pretty good. Yeah,
Awesome.
I love working with my ancestors. They're a fun bunch.
Yep, they're a fun. I love that you say that because sometimes I sit and I think, I'm like, ooh, which one of my ancestors do I most relate with? Like, do I really, really act like? I'm like, I have some hoochie ancestors. I have some little, no, let me stop.
No, but that's exactly how it is. Actually, I saw recently a TikTok, one of those templates is this guy like dancing, and the comment behind this dance was like, when you give alcohol to that ancestor that cannot handle alcohol, and then the guy was like, "Come on, guys, it's Friday," and dancing, and I like to perceive my ancestors in that way, exactly. Like there's a few that you can go on about love. There's a few that you can go on about money, but I feel that we are diving in too far. So yeah,
No,
sorry.
it's a good start. It's a great segue. So everybody kick back and relax and let's talk about our ancestors. So what I first want to kind of touch on is what is an ancestor or what are our ancestors? I know that that question may seem kind of like, come on, everybody knows what an ancestor is, but some people may not. So AB, what is your definition of an ancestor or the ancestors?
Yeah, so an ancestor pretty much in it's a member of our family or a member of leadership in our spiritual court. Obviously, talking in the spiritual side, that is not necessarily on this plane already, move on, is already in the spiritual side. The funny thing about Spanish is that in Spanish, the word ancestor is divided in two ways, ancestro y antepasado. And one has the biological connotation, and the other one has like the I raise you type of connotation. And in English, an ancestor does not necessarily has to be a member of your bloodline, and it's the same in Spanish, but in Spanish we have the difference with two words instead of just one. But yeah, I think that that's a good explanation. Yeah.
No, I agree. I definitely agree with that. I agree that an ancestor doesn't have to be somebody from your same bloodline. Could be somebody that was just significant to you that was before you that has passed on now to that ancestral plane. So I like that. I like
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
What about you, Connor? What is your definition of an ancestor?
I think AB got it down pretty pat to begin with, but I'm gonna add as well, like definitely members of your like, I guess like cultural community as well. So like for example, like you know, if you're like, I want to connect with my ancestors that are like, for example, like Irish, you may also have people who are Irish come in as well that are technically connected to like related to that like Gaelic bloodline, but aren't exactly directly from yours. So you may have members of that community step forward. I've even heard that you can even have members of your occupation step forward as a kind of like, in addition to that. And ancestors, you don't necessarily have to know them. They can be by blood, and you don't have to like know them by name necessarily. Sometimes, as you develop your relationship with your ancestors, you will learn their names and stories over time, depending on how often or frequently you work with them and how much you sort of like hone your abilities to discern what they're trying to tell you, essentially.
Awesome. I like that. I definitely like that. So um that kind of leads me into the next discussion. What is ancestral veneration or honoring your ancestors? If you want to, you can take that away, Connor.
Sure thing. So, when you honor your ancestors, typically it's about doing something that would honor them as a person. So, for example, if you know that ancestor, like it's a grandmother, that grandmother loved, for example, like may have like been Christian and enjoyed sewing. One way you could honor her is by like saying the Lord's Prayer or Mother Mary's Prayer or something to that for her as a way to lift her spirit up and give honor and thanks to her. Or you could also sew as well and pick up that sort of like trade in a way. And by doing things that they enjoyed, you kind of like give honor back to them. You can give them energy in that way. I know it's very common for people to give offerings of like water, alcohol, food, cakes, etc. Um, So basically doing anything that kind of like lifts up your ancestors, that can include like lighting candles for them. There are many myriad of different ways that you can honor your ancestors.
Absolutely. What about you, AB?
Yeah, pretty much in my head, venerating is remembering them, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I think that that's why this Disney's film Coco, that is, it takes this Mexican practice of Dia de Muerto, is a wonderful example.
Mm-hmm. It was a good
Your
movie.
family disappears when you forget them, your ancestors.
That's right.
And it's not that disappears. The thing is that the act of feeding your ancestors, the act of offering them coffee, water, alcohol, the act of lighting candles, putting incense, um, we can see across cultures that this act of remembering them strengthen their spiritual energy
Mm-hmm.
onto this reality, and obviously give them a strength to be able to protect you, to help you with petitions. And that's why I like Coco so much, because the idea of remembering your ancestor is what brings power onto your bloodline. And many of our ancestors, I will say many of them, we don't know them by name, but the
Mm-hmm.
very act of
Yes.
remembering them, the very act of ancestors that I may not know by name, but I know by bloodline, I am remembering you. I'm not letting you go. I'm not forgetting you. I am elevating you. I'm venerating you. This act of remembrance is what, um, yeah, let's say that gives this spiritual energy onto them. So venerate, I feel that venerating your ancestors, it looks different according to person, and according obviously to financial circumstances.
Yes.
Um, but within my practice, I just began with candle and water, and that was it.
Hmm.
Yep.
And it made a difference in my practice. Then I included elements like incense and coffee and liquor. And I think that the cool thing about these practical aspects is that everyone has the opportunity to find out what works better for them.
Hmm.
And I am not the person that, oh, just intention is enough. But I feel that with the veneration, intention is the key element, and everything else just add to it. Of
Yes.
course, and I always say the same thing in every episode, nuanced. If you have a close practice, if you belong to a close practice where the tradition indicates how to venerate your ancestor, you have to latch on how that tradition indicates you to do so. If
Mm-hmm.
you are creating your own practice or your own personal experience, then the story changes, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I like everything that you both touched on, especially the Mexican culture. I grew up in an area that was it was a mix, but there was a large presence of Mexicans, and fell in love with the Day of the Dead because I just really, really love how like you said, your ancestors, they're not on this plane, but they're not gone. As long as you remember them, that's what immortalizes you, right? So just the thought of ancestral veneration really makes me feel good. It humbles me, especially because we all know that we're going to pass one day, right? We're going to pass on. And to know that somebody will keep me alive by just remembering me, by honoring, the things that I did, like how you said, oh, if I like to cook or I like to sew, I would like to see my kids, just honor me in that way, to keep that memory alive.
Mm-hmm.
For the Black culture, and when I say the Black culture, I mean, Black people, born and raised in the United States of America, and they probably don't know their ancestral history prior to the slave trade, the Atlantic slave trade. I think what's really important for us is that we honor our ancestors with knowledge. It's really, really a shame to say that, of course, a lot of our history has been whitewashed. We all know that across many cultures that have Black people, They try to, wash the black out of you. They try to breed the black out of you. So I'm starting to see today that more black people are becoming woke. I guess that's the new terminology is be woke, they're woke now. They're interested about, okay, what Africans were kings and queens and came from, they want to know before the slave trade because we're vastly known for just being slaves, for being oppressed and being slaves. So I think that black people should start there. Honor your ancestors by understanding the sacrifices that they made, the blood that they shed. And it's so funny because like I love ratchet, ratchetness and ratchet rappers and girls that are like, oh, I just love it because I like that energy. But people always say, oh, if our ancestors could see us, they would be, they would be so upset. And sometimes maybe we need to think about those things, maybe we need to think about the best way to honor, the sacrifices that our ancestors made. So yeah, I think that's a good place to start. So
Yeah.
good stuff, good stuff. Okay, so let's talk about do you guys see across because I know that you both do a lot of reading across cultures or just what you've seen, how do you see people honoring their ancestors and they may not know it or they may, fully be aware, oh, this is me honoring my ancestors. Like what have you guys seen?
Well, the first one that pops to mind is normally in like more, I guess, traditional Catholic churches, you'll find a sort of like tiered, sort of like shelf or sort of like structure that has candles lining all the way up. And when I was a kid, my mom used to take me in and we would light a candle for our Nana Helen and for other members of our family that have passed on. And that is ancestral veneration, is when you light a candle for them, when you pray for them, and you do something in their honor.
Yes.
So that is something that's still quite prominent, I think, in more traditional Catholic churches. And whenever I go into one, there's always a handful of flames always burning.
Now, real quick before you put in your input, AB Connor, I just want to ask you real quick. So, yes, I do see a lot of people, they will light a candle in remembrance of, their ancestors. I seen a conversation on social media where people were like, well, what constitutes an ancestor? Does that person have to be passed for many years, or if say that they just passed last week? Are they an ancestor now? Even in your personal culture, in your practice.
Yeah, so like pretty much anyone like within your family, and I think it can even extend to like friends to a certain extent, or people who you've had within your family, be it found or not. When they pass over, they become an ancestor, in my perspective, at least. Like for example, like my brother will occasionally pop in and cause a little bit of havoc and poke some fun at me, and I honor him in being more, I guess, like forthright about who I am, like doing my own kind of stuff, not being so worried all the time, like just getting out and getting shit done. And also mangoes. He loved dried candy mangoes, so that's like
Oh,
one of my
wow.
favorite offerings to sit down and share with him.
That's
So
awesome.
pretty much like anyone who's just passed on, like even my great grandmother or great grandfather, I consider ancestors. So
Yeah.
anyone who's just crossed over, in my opinion.
Right. I agree. That's how I look at it too. What about you, AB? Before you go into what you've seen in other cultures, have you ever heard of that? Like, okay, this person has to be passed
Yes.
on for like 7 days before they're considered an ancestor.
Yeah, it depends. It depends of yes, what are you saying, Connor?
I just had this mental thought. It's like, Grandma, it hasn't been 7 business years. Stop contacting me. You're not an ancestor yet.
Well,
Just a little bit more.
it's
Your
funny.
timer's not done yet, Grandma.
It's funny, but it depends. It depends. In Latin America, and I think that I've read more that in Spiritismo, I think, and also with certain Catholic elements, um, there is a process of elevation for any ancestor. And actually, there is a practice within the Catholic faith where you do novenas for the people that passed away. So the novena pretty much is a 9-day period where the family, the congregation is going to be praying for the soul to come faster from the purgatory and go on to heaven. Also, within spiritual practices, if I am not wrong, Spiritismo is one of them. You are meant to elevate every single person that passed away um, onto the ancestor element. I'm not saying that they need of you, but there is a process of purification, exaltation, and the reality is that shedding the body does not necessarily means that you already became what you were meant to be. Actually, in Buddhist practices, the process of joining the nirvana is a process that takes multiple and multiple reincarnations, multiple acts of good and good deeds.
Wow.
And this process of growth takes effort. So all of this to say that I've read that according to the practice, it might take 1 year to a person to be able to be honored as an ancestor. But again, it depends of the culture and depends of the practice
Yeah.
and also depend of the ancestor. If you know that that person was powerful in life, I,
Mhm.
as you say, Connor, I don't think that, oh, well, Grandma, I'm going to wait for you for a year before but I do think that when a person pass, there is a process of healing maybe, or there is a process of trauma of leaving the earth world. And I will not pray for a person that just passed away, hey, let's start working on my protection and manifestations. they
Yeah.
just they just they just passed, so
Yeah.
I will leave like a period um of time for them to get accustomed to the
Yeah.
spiritual
Yeah.
side. Let's
Right.
say it like that.
Yeah. I like
um
that because
so
that's how
that
I look at it too.
that on that side, and again, I'm taking for multiple areas because we Latinos have multiple roots. And I don't want to dismiss what you mentioned a moment. Hey, I like the ratchet, the rap music. And as a person that grew in a lower income area, there is a beauty and union in people that have less that cannot be seen in spaces of high
Yes.
income. Let's say it like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I say this in the sense of many of my ancestors were poor, and many of my ancestors were native. And obviously, I am a person that I value reading and
Mhm.
and sense of politeness and courtesy, but I also enjoy dancing. Even
Yes.
I am terrible dancing, and I enjoy loud music, and I enjoy people having a good time, and
Yes.
having your beer in hand and having fun and shouting and saying and bad words cussing.
Yes.
So when I'm saying all of this, there is a beauty on unhinged, raw, natural human aspect. And I don't think
Yes.
that there's anything wrong unless you are hurting someone, unless you are damaging someone.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
can enjoy whatever you can enjoy and you can be
Yes.
whoever you want to be. And there is a beauty on I there is some beauty on this side of life because I also feel that many educated, polite, respectful attitudes were imposed onto us,
Mhm.
especially people of color, were imposed onto us just to distinguish us of you are not white. And no matter how similar or how close you get to that educated place, you are always going to be a person of
That's
color.
right.
I
Mhm.
also
So
want to add in too, I feel like other cultures may have had their own definitions of what was polite as well. So your ancestors
exactly.
Right.
did have
Right.
manners. They just had manners that was specific to their culture that they regarded as that.
Into their
At that
space.
time.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
that's why I'm like, girl, if you like as you said, your ratchet music, enjoy it.
Because
Go
I
and twerk while you are yelling profanity and drink. I like that too. I will do it with you. And and bringing that onto the ancestor aspect. Many of our ancestors were not in a place for them to think, oh, this is incorrect or this is correct. This is part of my culture. This is part of my side. So That's why I say, hey, if it doesn't hurt anyone, do it, enjoy
Do
it.
it.
You
Yeah,
know, let that come out. And
let your
I
fear
bring
fly.
this
Absolutely.
up because one way to venerate ancestors, and I'm going to finally respond in your question. I'm so sorry
Sorry.
No,
because
you're good.
I didn't
I
want to
asked you double
dismiss.
questions.
I,
Yeah.
I feel I don't want to dismiss that side because also venerating us our ancestors is getting rid of ideals that society, this Christian whitewash, westernized society has imposed
Yeah.
onto us of how to venerate our ancestors. And venerating ancestors also is playing drums and dancing, is enjoying the music
Yes.
that their culture enjoy, is
Hmm.
enjoying the food that they enjoy. And in Venezuela, um, something that people does, at least my grandpa did on his Spanish side, he had a photo of his parents and his wife that passed away with a cup of water. But then I go onto my family side, and when someone passed away, they mourn for that person, and then they make a big loud party with loud music, and everyone gets drunk, and it's like I'm gonna remember them for their happiness and not necessarily for they passing. So there is a nuance on
Yeah.
how the practice goes according to what side and what trait of the society you are located as well.
Absolutely. And to again tie in back what Lala said in the past, one of the things I do like about ancestral veneration is that with some religions, it's like, at least like with the church, it's like, well, then that person dies, then they're separate from you completely and they're off in another area and there's like no connection. And death is like considered to be like something scary where it's like almost like a gamble at the end, like did you do enough, did you not do enough? But with ancestral veneration, like it demonstrates to you that like you there is connection, there is like life after death, and
Hmm.
you receive confirmation that your ancestor made it over okay and they're in a better place, and you receive that confirmation and that lessens the fear of death. I even
Yes.
feel that like since my practice, since introducing ancestral veneration into my practice, that I've had a healthier perspective when it comes to death, which I'm very thankful for.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yes, I think that being scared or having a fear is because it's an unknown.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have any knowledge. You're just like, oh, and this is going to lead me into my next topic of um you started to mention it, AB, when you talked about purgatory. So let's kind of talk about that. Like when we pass, what or let's talk about our ancestors passing. So when our one of our ancestors passed, what do they go through to elevate to get to that next level? What have like AB, what have you studied or read, or like how you just mentioned with going through purgatory? What do you know about that?
Okay, so the thing is that the purgatory, obviously, that like this place in between the, the heaven and earth, um, in the Catholic aspect, is like a place of purification. You just left this human earth, you sinned, and maybe you were saved by the Lord, but you sinned, so you need to be purified. And pure in purgatory, notice, is not a place of punishment. It's a space of purification, and it's a place of transition. And many cultures do share these, even not necessarily the place, they do share the process, the transition. um, Honoring your ancestor does share a practice of 9 days where you are going to take the photo of the ancestor that you are looking to elevate, and you are going to place it on a stack of books, and you are going to light a candle for that ancestor, and every day you are going to do a prayer, and you are going to elevate the stack one day at a time. So one day you start with one size and the photo, then the next day you put another book so the photo gets higher. So you are physically representing the act of elevating that ancestor from day one to day nine. This is also something that is done in Espiritismo as well, with Bóvedas and all of that. But again, I'm not an spirit. I do not practice Spiritism, so I cannot talk on that. But it's a practice that is commonly done, and if it's not done in that way, the one that I am familiar with definitely is praying for 9 days, the novenas in Catholic Church. So the way that I see it is that you are actively putting off your energy on purifying or assisting that ancestor that already passed, on elevating them. Something that is very common in chaos magic is the idea that the more you pray, the more belief you put onto a spirit, a deity, the stronger they become. Not necessarily because they are feeding, it's because you are giving that strength to them. And it's an idea that I do agree with because we can see it manifested in this way.
I
So
agree with that.
the act
Mm.
of the elevating your ancestor is you are putting an effort on. I want you. That is like a very honest way to say I love you. I
Yes.
want you to get to that place that you deserve to be. I understand your sacrifice. I understand your pain. I also understand your wisdom, and you don't need of me, but I want to help you to get there. In the same way that I know that you are going to be helping me from the other side. So
Yeah.
it's a very sacrificial um, and very conscious way of saying, "Hey, I'm putting from me onto you."
Yes.
If that
Mhm.
No,
sounds.
I like that. And I think that we do see that in a lot of cultures. I have a friend who is of the Buddhist religion, and I'm not sure what the time span was, but yes, she has a calendar that she follows to go and pray over her mother's grave and really spend that time. So I think that we do see it across cultures how um a process that goes from when that person passes to elevate them to an
Mhm.
ancestor. But what about you, Connor? What about in your practice, how, like, what do you see your ancestors going through, or what have you learned or studied that will elevate them to that point?
So I also have read the same book. So a lot of my
Good
views are
book.
quite similar to that. It's a good book. So definitely there is a period of like transformation that occurs after death, where they're sort of like tying up the loose ends they need to before they sort of like move on to a more liminal space, I guess you could say. Um, and then after that, it seems that they can kind of be wherever they want to be at many places at once and just sort of go on from there. But essentially, pretty much the same once an ancestor dies. I guess for some, it may take a little bit longer than others, depending on, I know, if that particular soul needs to let go of some things
Hmm.
or if they need to grow in some way, because for me, like when I die, I know at some point within my belief system, like my soul will go on and be transformed into a different incarnation of some kind. It's not
Hmm.
incarnation exactly, reincarnation, but it's like, it's not about karmic, it's about learning specific lessons. So certain perspectives of certain creatures will have perspectives that I won't have, that will teach me what lessons I need to know. So whatever I need to know in my human life, I'm learning now. Hopefully, I actually like learn the lessons and not just go like da 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 but you know, hopefully at some point becoming just sort of like a primary kind of ancestor to just keep watch over and provide guidance and wisdom to some extent.
Yeah.
Yeah, so mine's
I'm
like a
glad.
slice of animism almost too.
Okay. I'm glad that you touched base on that, because that was going to be another question that I had for the both of you. What about, I know that when we think of like somebody passing, whether they are like, a close relative, a blood relative, or just somebody that was close to us,
Mm-hmm.
we always think of like, oh, grandma, grandpa, somebody that was older. What about those people that endured turmoil while they were, in this humanly earthly realm? Um, and they were just, just whatever, like their whole life was just stressed, or even if they committed suicide and that's how they passed. Um, Connor, are there any practices or any things that we should do more for those type of people to make sure that they, elevate to an ancestor, that they're not stuck in this purgatory?
Um, in that case where some spirits take like much longer in order to try to like let go or move on from that kind of like transformational state, I feel that you can definitely pick up whatever, you know, recommended practices there are from your specific culture, or religion, and just practice that. So I would likely, personally speaking, like I would pray over them. I would put up a photo of them. I would give them offerings and food and just give them things they would need to recover from a sort of like traumatic experience to help them heal in that period and then have the strength to transform, and then move on to the next part. So mine's probably going to look slightly different from other people, but that's what I would do if an ancestor of mine or a family member of mine went out in a traumatic, brutal way. Spending more attention on helping them cross over.
Absolutely. What about you, AB?
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, I fully agree with Connor. I think that that is the best approach. One, taking consideration the faith and culture of the person that passed.
Mm-hmm.
Two, I do feel that it's important to have a medium of communication with them. In this case, if if you as a practitioner, you are prone to communicate with spirits. If you have that ability, use it. If not, divination, tarot, pendulum, obviously setting a good boundary.
Mm-hmm.
And in these instances, if a person that passed away that was healthy, lush, full of life and wisdom, I still elevate. These are the main focus people that I will say, okay, we definitely need to go to a process of um, intervention and purification and elevation. Also, it's important to take in consideration, and this is a conversation that we can see in multiple spaces. Some people like to work with all their ancestors, some people do not like to work with all of them. I think that it all depends of what your perception of elevation is.
Mm-hmm.
um, if this person, let's say for example, not only that, if they left in a traumatic way, if they were problematic in life, um,
Yeah.
there's no other way. If they were racist, homophobic, if they were violent, if they were alcoholic and drug addicts and all of that, um, this is the the main people that you have to elevate, and use
You
them for that quality.
Absolutely. And you also have a choice of which ancestors to work with. If you didn't get along with an aunt or something like that,
You don't have
you
to.
don't have to work with her. Okay. You can be like, I love you and all. You can stay over there. And I'm going to use these ancestors.
You can there
you know?
The thing is that there is a difference between ancestor veneration and working with an ancestor, and
Mm-hmm.
it's two different things. If you
Mm-hmm.
want to venerate your ancestor because of who they are, venerate them. I do think that once that you get rid of this material uh, body, you should be able to perceive things that you were not able to perceive in life. And I do think that if you were homophobic and violent and all of that in this human world, where uh, obviously I want everyone to take responsibility of their actions, but also
Mm-hmm.
understanding that a lot of people were the result of trauma. They were traumatized, were
Mm-hmm.
the result of trauma, and they caused trauma to others. M- Um, let's go to our ancestry. Our ancestry comes from violence, comes from
Yes.
slavery, comes from
Yep.
pain, and that trauma is hereditary. you
Mm-hmm.
know
Yep.
so it's hard for us being the healers, the priest, this the magician, we have to heal our bloodline, heal ourselves, we
Mhm.
deal with the trauma of our parents, deal with our own and
Mhm.
also our ancestors. It's not a easy place to be. So that's why I never take, if you anyone, like, if you do not want to work with this ancestor that was problematic or violent or whatever, that's completely fine. I will
Mhm.
never judge you for that. If you do want to work with them and elevate them and heal them, bless,
Yes.
you are a very nice candid soul in this world. um it's a very, very broad topic,
Yeah.
but I do say, I like to venerate all of my ancestors. That doesn't mean that I work with all of them. I don't think
Yeah.
that I also have the energy to work with every single one of my ancestors.
Yeah.
um
Yep.
if that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, have you both ever experienced where you're trying to work with, a certain ancestor and it's not going as you expect it to go, and then you're like, wait a minute, this might be, Uncle whoever that you don't like that's trying to come through, and like, have you ever experienced any of that? Like where you feel like you're getting a vibe from an ancestor that you wasn't fond of, and how did you handle that?
If you want to go first, Connor.
Okay. So I haven't necessarily had that exact experience. Usually, when I'm doing spell work, I consider what ancestors I'm going to call upon to do it. For example, like I likely would not call upon any Catholic or Christian ancestors because it's not really their cup of tea. You know what I mean? It's not really their thing to want to do like witchcraft, especially if they were
Yeah.
taught it was, So I typically won't rely on them, even if their perspective has changed. I'm just sort of like, it's not something that they're used to. Um, where I would then connect farther back to my ancestors who practiced that original, like, goddess based religion or pagan, druidic, whatever religion, traditional practices, because they know how it works. They are fine with the working and they're more aligned to it. So I try and find the most efficient route to get where I want to go, right? So I will call upon them and be like, here's some whiskey, here's some like cake,
Yeah.
you know, let's get working, right?
Yeah. What about you, AB? Have you ever felt the spirit of an ancestor that you really didn't want to work with?
um uh, Also latching on to what Connor was mentioning regarding all the Catholic and the Christians, ironically, in my Latino culture, and that's why I say I think that is very a cultural thing. I do call, I do ask Catholic ancestor support at the time too, because in our culture it's not uncommon. It's very similar to the hoodoo aspect. With hoodoo and brujeria, I see them like, the cousins, like within the family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because in brujeria, like a lot of my ancestors, they were doing their brujeria, their bruja shit, and they didn't call it brujeria. Oh no, I'm praying. Oh no,
Yeah.
I'm praying to this holy saint.
What do you mean,
This is
these
no.
herbs? No,
Uh,
these are just holy
this
herbs.
is what we do. I don't know what you're talking about. This is no brujeria. So that's why I want to say, like, it depends,
Yeah.
Now I do remember having one or two instances in when I was praying for something. I did remember that once, especially getting close to getting married with my husband, I did feel that one of my ancestors on my mother's side, I don't know why, their image was presenting on my mind, and I was like, I know that he's homophobic. I know that he was homophobic, and it's funny that he kept presenting themselves, and it was like, hey, you are my ancestor, I respect you, but I'm alive and you're not.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I call the shots there.
So if you want to if you want to feed from this veneration, you better respect that. Sad.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
And that
Absolutely.
was the last time that happened. But I can't say that it was like their image presenting themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and not that candles were breaking, nor like the house was shaking, or anything like, nor anything like that. It was like
Yeah.
their presence was being very showcasing themselves
Yeah.
like a lot in my mind. And finally, when I got married with my husband, I did feel like a side of my bloodline also healed, because I had an uncle that everyone in the family knew that was gay, but nobody acknowledged it because, Latinos said, oh no, we don't
Yeah.
talk about that.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I'm publicly getting married with the love of my life. Take that. And I did feel that in one way or another, I was doing that also on his behalf. Like, we
Yeah.
were not able to do it, but I did, and I'm thankful of your sacrifice.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I wish
I
that
like that.
you could have experienced this
Yes. Yes.
type of thing. So yeah.
And I think that is also a great way, to honor your ancestor. Like you said, just to be that first one that, that's able to publicly display your affection for whoever it is that you love. And like you said, it's too bad that back in his day he couldn't do that.
Mm,
So I think what more of a beautiful way to honor them.
And we keep returning
absolutely.
onto the veneration aspect of venerating also is healing the bloodline.
Yes.
And
Veneration is healing that they were not able to live or do when they were in life. Oh, I come from a family where we don't communicate. We just argue and we get mad and we stop talking to each other for 2 years. I'm going to be that piece of change. Of course,
Yes.
without giving yourself too much to the point that you cannot live happy, but you know what I mean. There
Yeah.
there
finding a
is a
balance.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that that's very, very important, and I love that. So quick, kind of side note, for those of us who are on a journey to find who our ancestors are, um, what recommendations do you guys have for that? Like, what's on my mind is the DNA test and stuff like that. Like, how do you guys feel about utilizing that to learn, your roots? Do you think it's like all a sham? Like, oh, they're just trying to get everybody's DNA and they're gonna tell you you're, a percentage of every race in
What
the world, or
are you
how do
trying to
you
do?
feel about
Clone me? Do you want more Connors around? I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. Good luck with that.
how do you feel about that, Connor? Like would you
um,
ever do an ancestry test?
so I actually have done an ancestry test
Okay.
because I went as far as I could go with knowledge of the immediate family about where we came from. And originally I was like, oh, well, we're like German, we're Irish, maybe, we're definitely English, and maybe some Scottish, and that's pretty much all we knew. But I was like, I feel like there's more, like I wanted to dig deeper, but we didn't have like the connections or the resources or something to do it. So when I did do the ancestry test, I learned there was a lot more to my ancestry than I initially realized. That actually helped kind of like fill in a couple gaps, like my grandfather's last name. Like, where did it come from? It didn't necessarily match any of the cultures we were associated with. So like, we're not sure where that kind of came from. So I definitely recommend, like, if you feel comfortable with it, doing an ancestry test can definitely help. But first, try and speak to older generations of your family, or find if one of your family members, be it an aunt or an uncle or somewhere else, is compiling a family tree or has access to that information. Going through that kind of research first is important. And once you figure out the culture that you're connected to, doing research on that culture and understanding its traditions and things like that. Because when ancestors come from that culture that you don't know anything about, that's one of the main ways they communicate, is like their experience within the culture and the meanings, the associations. So being able to understand and sort of learn how to speak that kind of same language in terms of symbolism, like influences, things like that, can help you better understand them and develop a deeper connection with that ancestor. So most definitely, like, figuring out what your backgrounds are and doing
Mhm.
research on them is like primary, I feel.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
I get it's so cool because I remember when genealogist, when that term really like blew up. Like, oh, you can work with a genealogist. I mean, at the public library, they were holding sessions here in the US where you could just meet with a genealogist and understand how do you go down that hole of going back and, looking at documents and whatever is there. What's so sad for a lot of people of African descent, as well as Native American Indian descent, because I want to touch on something real quick that a lot of people may not know, is that a small percentage of African slaves were brought to North America. A very small percentage. The majority was left in the Caribbeans,
Center
in
and
South
South
America.
America.
Exactly.
Yes.
So the sad thing is that there were a lot of black skin or melanated Indians that were already here in America that got mixed in to the slave trade. And again, by way of whitewashing, trying to just, get the dark out
Colonization.
of people. Yeah.
Yep.
They relabeled, us Negroes. And, of course that may not have been the term back then, but it's pretty sad. So yeah, so when it comes to, those people, it's like sometimes there's no record. It stops short. So
Yes.
in that situation, I just say, just learn as much as you can, talk to some elders that are still around, because there are still elders that are around that, that know, that they took stories from, their ancestors, and they still have that story. Like, one thing that I regret is that I didn't talk to my grandparents more. Because I think that's the best way to, to understand where you come from is, by word of mouth, by the people
Mhm.
that live that. So while your elders are still around, talk to them, or just talk
Yes.
to any elder, to just understand, try to gain an understanding.
Yes.
So what about you, AB? Have you ever taken an ancestry test? And if not, how, okay, so
Yes.
you,
Same path. I in a similar way, as you mentioned, and obviously not necessarily the same. I'm an immigrant. I'm here in USA, so that also adds another layer to the minority aspect.
yeah.
Um, and I am based on the results of my DNA. Certainly, I have a big, big, big majority of Spain, but I also have a big percentage of natives, but natives not necessarily not only from Venezuela, from Central and South America. And I'm
Yes.
also like you, Papi. I'm 3% Welsh. I'm like I'm from
Somewhere, if
and
there's
from
Welsh
Ireland,
somewhere.
so I know that I have somewhere over there that it's like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
um,
Have you seen
so-
that one TikTok by there's a First Nations gentleman who's like when you accidentally summon the wrong ancestors and he has like a raven feather instead and you hear
yeah, in
like
the river.
Nordic drums in the back and he's just like,
Oh,
all right, cool.
this dude is a Viking. Yeah, no, I saw that, and yes, the first thing that I did was like when I got here that I had DNA money, DNA test money. That's the thing. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm gonna invest on this, and I want to get to see where my roots are at. Because I think that one of my biggest struggles, especially diving into the spirituality path, is me being Venezuelan. The first thing that you are taught in Venezuela, we are Spanish, we are native, and we are African descendant.
Hmm.
But obviously, we all have more and less percentage of each. I
Mhm.
cannot claim on being native. I did not grow in the culture. I don't know anything about my native traits. But I also cannot claim of being Spanish, even though it's the biggest percentage I have because I did not grow up in the culture. And I cannot claim being Afro Latino because one, obviously, even though I'm melanated, I do not look as much as I don't have the same amount of melanin, and I did not grow up in the Afro Latina sides of Venezuela in the coast. So it's funny that we found this identity of I'm mixed or I'm here or I'm there. And some people find difficulty, okay, but who am I? What am I?
Yeah.
And the best
Yeah.
way to find some source of um, information about it was getting the DNA test.
Yeah.
And as soon as I was able to pinpoint at least a particular site, I was able to decide, okay, this is the approach that I'm going to take with my practice. And that's when I became closer to St. Cyprian, which also translate excellently into Latin America and South America. But we all find this point in our life that I feel, particularly, of course, that we have to decide, am I my roots or am I my own path?
Mm-hmm.
Who am I? What am I going to decide to do? And I think that was the detrimental point as soon as I started working with my ancestor, that I could find a sweet middle, a sweet balance between
Yeah.
Mhm.
my ancestral practices, as much as I can find of them, and also who Aníbal is and what I
Yes.
can learn. So I do recommend everyone that feel confident enough to take, the ancestry test to do so. So in that way, you understand at least from what areas your family, your
Yes.
ancestors might be from.
Yes. I like that. I haven't taken one yet because I'm not a fan of spit. I thought it was like,
I love
oh, give us a little bit of blood, but they're like, you have to spit in this tube. And I'm like, oh
the
shit.
spit is nice.
I think it's funny that you're just like, blood, yeah, sure, just take it right
I'm
now.
like, take the
But we're
blood,
spit,
but
you're
the
like,
spit, I'm like,
no
oh.
thanks.
I want the spit.
Yeah, so I think that
Sure you do.
I'm gonna try it. I don't spit like I used to, guys. So
Well, you should try a little bit more. I don't know, like what's going on.
Free lubrication.
oh my gosh, but I
Stop.
love that. Yes, start with the DNA test. There's a couple of companies that are, really well known.
Yes.
And they always offer discounts around the holidays. So yeah, if you want to find out where you're from. And I like how some people are like, yeah, we're Indians and we're Italians, and then they get the test back and it's like, no, you're actually Irish Mexicans, so, so I
Yeah.
love that, but
And
I
and
think
no,
it's fun.
and I think that, and I want to reinforce, of course, this is my personal experience as a very mixed person, because I'm mixed. Like
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I'm very mixed. That is a big thing. Um, do not claim to be from a cult. There's a difference between who your ancestors are
yeah,
and who are you. Don't
Mhm.
claim my culture that you have not bleed for.
yes.
And because I know a lot
I
of
love
people that
that.
they have, oh, my grandma, she was a Cherokee priestess. Okay,
Yeah,
cool. Are you from the tribe?
yeah.
Are you bleeding
No.
from the tribe?
Right, right.
Are you
I see
clay?
that a lot.
Like, and not
And it's
only,
always Cherokee, right? It's
yeah,
always
that,
like,
oh,
yeah,
this
we're
is Cherokee.
Cherokee.
And it's not only from here in Venezuela. Oh yeah, yeah, we come from the Arawak. Okay, do you speak the language?
Did you grow up in the culture?
Did you grew up in the space? Have you bleed as
Oh
a
my
bleed?
Yeah.
gosh.
There is a,
Similar. Yeah,
yes.
similar here. I can't claim that I'm Irish, even though I'm like what fucking 14% Irish. I can't be like, fuck out of here. I can't fucking like
The
claim that
Irishman.
because it's
Yeah,
yeah.
they're gonna like
The
kick your
Irishman.
ass. Like,
they're
you
gonna
have an
make yeah,
Irish
they're gonna be like, yeah,
accent.
fuck you. um
Well, I'm
it's
I'm
a living
I'm I'm
culture.
3% Irish, okay?
Oh, three. Oh,
I'm
damn. I'm gonna
3%.
kiss me. I'm Irish.
Oh,
Oh,
ooh.
you guys are too much.
Oh, and then
Um,
apparently I'm also Russian to a certain extent. That's new.
We like the
oh,
flavor.
I don't know.
okay. Oh my
I'm a
goodness.
lot.
That is so cool. I think that these tests are so cool how they do it. So yeah, start with the test, but I like to also think that okay, this is being done in a laboratory and sometimes labs do make mistakes and whatnot. So don't just rely on the test. Like we said, talk to who's still left, of your elders that you can talk
Mhm.
to, get information, talk to other people. You'll be surprised what you find. One thing on this subject that I want to mention, the last thing is that just what I was talking about Black people not really knowing, hey, am I really, do I have indigenous Indian roots or am I, all African? I believe that most of us, it's a mix. You're gonna be, it's a mix. You probably have some European in you too, and you
Yep.
too, So I love this author and doctor, Dr. Kaba Kamine. I love him because that is all that he talks about is, ancient African, indigenous American cultures, just kind of uncovering okay, these were the true, Native Americans of this area. And then these other people came in, and because they were lighter complected, they got the, they got the title. And again, the melanated people just keep being washed out. So definitely recommend that our listeners look him up. He did write a book, Spirituality Before Religion. I think he's written a few books, but I just love his social media presence. He's always posting how he's going to be in Atlanta, or he's going to be here. He even goes to the site. He goes to the site of certain ancestral sites that, were significant in
Yes.
the African slave trade, stuff like that. So I love his presence.
Yes.
And the last one is the right of abode. This is something that's going on in the Ghanese, I might be saying that, the government of Ghana. They have recognized their role in the slave trade. And because it's a sad thing that not all Africans were stolen, a lot of them were just sold, So they've recognized that, and they are welcoming people of African descent that are part of the diaspora. Basically, you don't know where you come from. You're probably I'm sorry, a product of slaves. They're giving citizenship. They're giving dual citizenship, and
Wow.
and there's really nothing that you have to do but apply. So if
Oh,
you want to Google right of abode, OBODE, or the website for the Ghana government is mint.gov.gh. And it's very interesting. I learned about this actually from a few celebrities like Ludacris. They were, announcing that, hey, I have dual citizenship. So you can go back to the motherland and just understand your roots. So
that's
I
very
love
cool.
that. So let's
That is
get into
interesting.
some good stuff. Let's talk about how we practice. So Connor, when you decide that, and I guess a good note is to say that a lot of spells, and especially like in hoodoo, like it's always before you do divination, call upon your ancestors, ask them to guide you. So working with your ancestors is big in any type of ritual that you're going to do or any type of spell. So Connor, how would you practice if you are going to um, work with an ancestor?
That for me would really heavily depend on what the activity is. So, for example, if I'm doing like a house cleansing, like if I'm clearing out my house, and I'm setting in protections, I'm gonna want to bring in pretty much any ancestor is used to like cleaning house. But I also kind of want to bring in a little bit of warrior ancestors that have kind of been in combat to aid with protection and sort of warding the place from anything trying to enter in, sort of be like sentries. So typically I'll bring in all ancestors to like help clean out the house. Plus, I find that, even just casually sitting around in my room, just relaxing or doing whatever, I'll invite them in. I'll say, hey, I'll light your candle, I'll drop a cookie, like I'll give you some offerings. If you guys want to hang out with me, you're more than welcome. And I like
That.
inviting my ancestors into my place because it's supposed to be like I want them to feel welcome in my home. Um, so long as they don't like throw things around and like, try and freak me out or anything like that.
Like
Which
you
they
gave
don't
us
do.
this dry ass cookie, like bringing the house
This
down.
is stale. Where's the beer?
I like that. So whenever you're doing anything, any type of practice, are there only particular times that you work with your ancestors, or do you kind of try to make it like all the time that you're gonna bring your ancestors in?
So it I try to pretty much bring them in as much as I can. Like, if I'm meditating, doing whatever else, like I try and draw them in as much as possible. but again, it really heavily depends, like, because I mostly like, if I'm making something, making a spell or crafting something, I usually know in the moment what I do need and what I don't need, and I'll pull on whatever threads and strings that I need to assemble it. So there are certain things that I won't call them in for, because I don't necessarily need them for it necessarily, or I feel like it's something that I need to do on my own,
Okay.
or anything within that extent. Um, but sometimes I'll just be like, hey, call out to an ancestor in the morning, be like, be with me throughout the day,
Yes.
spend time with me, chat with me, watch out for me, etc. Lend me your cooking
Absolutely.
skills.
When I pray, and this is something I started doing recently, I always pray to my ancestors. I always honor them. Of course, I honor God, the Alpha, the Omega, and then I honor the Holy Spirit, God being able to use the Holy Spirit to connect with me, and I honor my ancestors. I do honor Jesus because I'm still a Christian and I've just grown up with Jesus, Big J.
Big J.
So you guys have to watch. It's this movie called Genie. I believe it came out on Hulu, but it has oh my gosh, I can't think of her name. I gotta think of her name. Kind of a heavy set woman. She's a comedian. She's super hilarious. God, it's on the tip of my tongue. But yeah, but like she's this genie that's trapped in the bottle, and then she's like, why is everybody like, honoring Jesus Christ and everything? And she was like, I know Big J. It was just so funny. I thought it was so cute. So yes, I do still honor Jesus, just because I do feel that it's just significant. But I always include honoring the ancestors as well.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, AB? Do you always work with your ancestors, or are there certain times you will work with them?
Yeah, actually, in a very similar way as Connor. When I need an extra kick, when I'm doing something that I'm like, okay, I need an extra oomph, I'm like, hey, I am calling my entire spiritual court, my ancestors, like I am calling those that I know and those that I don't. And I admit that I also hold them accountable. Like, listen, I remembered you. You know that my offerings are there, at least a candle. I need your support. Because there are moments in life that you have to be like, bro, what's going on? I'm the one that is alive. You remember how it was when you were here? It's crazy out here. Like, I need your support. So yeah, when I need their help,
Yes.
I call them like, hey, if I need an extra cleanse because something is like going on and I need to do like a spiritual bath, I empower this bath by my power and will. I use the spiritual allies that I am working with, and then I go like, ancestors, empower these along with
Yes.
me, like bring them in. However, this is not all the time also. I'm not going to be like all the time, hey guys, no. I also know that they are working without me asking for them.
That's
So
right.
I respect that. Um, so what I do is that I do use quality of them that according to what I am going to do. For example, my grandpa, my father's dad, I call him for business or money related elements.
Mm-hmm.
My grandma on my mother's side, I call her for love or beauty related elements,
Yes.
because I know that these were qualities that they were strong in life. And that's also a reason why I do not call all of them for specific
Yeah.
elements, because I don't
Yeah.
know too many that can might help me on that aspect,
Yep.
unless they present themselves to me like, hey, this is what I do. Um, but yeah, I do think that ancestors, they, according to what they did in life, and that's what I'm saying, it's good that you have a few, not necessarily the best behaved in life, on your side as well. When you need someone, when you need
That's
to
right.
shake someone up, like you go
Yeah.
to
When you're going to
Uncle
spiritual
Bob.
war. Yeah.
Hey, Uncle Bob.
Uncle Bobby were the nastiest person
you
I knew. Come help
listen,
me.
you
Sick
know
him.
that.
Sick him.
You know
Get him,
that
Uncle
the
Bobby.
listen, Uncle Bob, you know that the whiskey and the tobacco is not missing in the altar. I need your help with this person. Shake them. Shake them.
I love that. I love that. So let's talk
So,
about that real quick. Like, so when
yeah.
you do want to, honor an ancestor, venerate them, call on them, what type of offerings do you like to leave?
Woo! Okay, food, food. That's a
Good.
thing, and
Yeah.
I feel that and again, that's why I'm saying, brujeria and hoodoo are very, very similar. Food is a
Mhm.
big, big thing for us. You want your grandma to hear you. Uh, no, let me rephrase that. You are feeling sad, and you go to your grandma's house. What is the first thing? Baby, sit down.
You hungry,
Cookies.
baby?
You hungry,
Mm-hmm.
baby, and she feeds you, and that feeds your soul and your heart and everything in
Yes.
between. That is
Yes.
the same thing. That is the best way to show appreciation. And you do not have to cook a lot. You can cook for home, for
Yeah.
you,
And
and
leave
you
a
can
little.
save a portion for them and put it
Mhm.
in the altar. And if you cannot put it in the altar because you are not in a position to throw away food, um, call them in while you are eating. Hey, in the same
Yeah.
way that I'm eating, feed through my body. We
Hmm.
are one. My DNA has the information of all my ancestors.
Yep.
Feed through me.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Um, you
And I
can
think a
also,
little bit of food can go a long way. So, like, if you can't leave a whole plate of food, say, hey, I
a
can only leave
corner.
this
You
much.
leave a
Yep.
portion. If you made rice with beans and chicken, a spoonful of rice,
Yes.
Mhm.
beans, moist with sauce and chicken on the side, a small portion. Hey, it's not much, but you know what it represents.
That's right.
Yeah.
Um, they see that, they feed from that,
Yes.
and I again, when you don't have food, for me, the coffee, I put coffee every 3 days, water every 3 days. I do not
Hmm.
change it every day. Some people do, some others don't. Um,
Yeah, I do every 7 days. I try to get it's just because my memory, I just
I
remember
feel that
to do everything on a Sunday.
I have
But
a day.
yeah.
I have a day off every 3 days.
Yeah.
So
Okay, yeah,
every
I
three
like
days,
that.
I change it. Um, yeah, that's how it rolls on my end.
Yeah.
Light, water, coffee, food,
Yes.
incense. But I do not give them coffee every day. I do not give them water every day. I do not give them incense every day. I do not give. I think that the only thing that I give them every day is light. Every
Yes.
day I put
Me
a
too.
light.
Yep, I have my light on. I'm surprised it hasn't blown out yet. Good LED light because it stays on. It stays on. Yes,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. What about you, Connor? Are there any I like how you mentioned, like if you feel like it's your brother, you may leave, certain things to honor him. Like, so what kind of things do you like to leave to honor your ancestors?
So sometimes like my brother, depends on the ancestor. So like mango slices, like specifically 4D brand mango slices that are candied is his shit. Like he loves that.
I love
So
it.
I'll give him mango slices, or sometimes if I'm in the store and I look over and I like see them and I'll think of them, I'll pick up a package and I'll split them with him.
Yeah.
Um,
And I believe that is when you think about, oh, I look at these, that's him connecting with you saying, hey, get me those slices, I'm
yes.
here with you.
It's like, come on, it's been a while. You know we both
Yeah.
want them.
I love that. I love that.
So typically it's I'll if the food I am making isn't like really messy, like if it's not like soup or something like that, like if it's more solid, I'll be more likely to give that out because I don't want to make a mess of their altar as well. I want to keep it nice and clean. But banana bread, my
Mm.
ancestors love banana bread. I think more so for the fact that it's bread than the banana part. But like I found that one of the best offerings you can give is, at least in my experience, is like baking a loaf of bread or baking something and
Mm.
giving them something, because there's nothing better, at least in my family, there's nothing better than like baked goods. Like
Yeah.
baked goods are like crack. They're just like, oh,
Yes.
like feed me, give me all that. So baked goods, definitely. Little candies, things like that,
Yeah.
I also love giving. um if we're doing a working, so for example, like every day I'll give them water,
Hmm.
and can sometimes forget, and it'll be like a week or something and I'll be like, oh shit, that's right, I have to refresh the water. I'll do that. Common, like baseline common offering is water. I won't always light the candle, but I always give out water,
Yeah.
at least drinks to everyone.
Yep.
And if I'm doing a working, that's when I'll break out the alcohol. Or if there's a celebration, I'll break out the alcohol and be like,
Yep.
here's some whiskey, here's some wine, here's some like soju. Try it. I don't know. You've never had this before. So
like
I'll share that. Yeah.
Yeah. Same here. I always leave water. Got this idea from Connor that this and then I guess just also in other cultures, skulls represent
Yeah.
the dead. So I have a skull glass that I actually leave the water in. I try to refresh that at least once a week. Like you said, I keep liquor just for that. I don't drink. So it's just for the ancestors. Sometimes it'll be wine, this one I just left a margarita.
I love that.
I left a margarita.
I imagine my grandma like, that's what I'm saying.
He's
Like
like,
when you were talking about, oh, I like my Russian. My grandma, that lady, she used to get so drunk with whiskey and dancing with everyone and kissing everyone on the mouth, like dead ass on the mouth. I know that if I leave a whiskey, like she will be like,
Oh, thank you, baby. Yes.
why
Yes.
will I not give that sense of freedom to my if they enjoy
That's
it in
right.
life, you know?
Also, to add as well, not all offerings have to be food. Some of them can be objects.
Yes.
For example, like sewing needles or perfume. Yeah,
Perfume. Ooh, I
perfume
like
bottles,
that.
sewing
Yeah.
needles, like pens if they
Flowers.
liked writing.
Yep,
Flowers,
paper.
like dried
Yeah.
flowers, are great offerings, like really good offerings.
Yes.
So
I
whenever I
love
get the
that.
opportunity to like harvest some of the flowers from my garden and dry them out, I'll give them as offerings, and they stay for a long time.
Yeah.
You know why I was laughing when you were talking about changing the water because I remember I think it was on TikTok a meme. Have you seen the movie Precious?
Yes.
I think
Okay.
so.
There
Yeah.
is a scene where Precious mom is saying that shit that you did in the kitchen, the whole phrase. I was thinking about that, like because I saw a meme that it was that scene, and in the upper side said something like, when you go to your ancestor to ask for something and you haven't changed the water in 7 days, that shit that you did in the kitchen, I'm gonna let it slide for today.
I'm gonna let that
Something
shit slide.
I want you to pick this up at the end of it, though.
This water has dust
Oh
in
my
it,
god.
bugs.
Yeah,
Change that
no.
shit.
There are moments that I mean, even if I change the coffee every 3 days, that I see the coffee that sometimes it grow mold, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, like you cannot be asking, is this coffee? Just relax. Like I cannot make coffee.
Piping
Oh
hot
my
every
god.
day. Let's go.
Yeah,
Oh
they want like a
gosh.
whole cup of coffee every day. Like, girl, give me the money and I will make you the coffee.
Exactly.
Oh,
Coffee on
What?
coffee.
This is how you treat your ancestors? How dare
Oh my
you?
like, and
gosh.
I'm like,
I'm
listen,
a guest in your house.
you want like fancy coffee? Give me the money. I will give you the
Yes.
coffee. Give me the money.
Yes. I
Oh
love
my
that. Yeah,
god.
that's what you have to do. Like get like a little, some fancy coffee and be like, you like that? You want more of that? Give me the money.
No, but there's also a sense of sacrifice, and I think that it's
Yes.
also important to be aware that our ancestors did sacrifice for
Yes.
us, and
So
they
we can
did sacrifice
sacrifice
in
a little.
life, and
Yep.
with all the difficulties that we are having. I'm not saying that all the ancestors were great and all, but within the circumstances, we are having a healthy life, very comfortable life compared
Yes.
with the life that many of our ancestors had, and there has to be a sort of sacrifice on our end on their
Yes.
behalf. That's
Yep.
why I'm saying elevating an ancestor for 9 days, that's nothing. you know
Exactly.
Giving
They
them water,
sacrifice
that
so much.
that's
Yep.
nothing. It's the best way for us to say, hey, I'm willing to work our relationship in the same way that we had it in life, in this life.
So we're gonna wrap it up. The last thing I want to discuss is your influences, your resources, books, websites, whatever, things that can aid you. For me, I did share my resources as far as Dr. Kaba Kamine. and mint.gov.gh, just for researching and maybe understanding. And though that's for the people that do not know anything about their ancestral history, probably up in, in before the 1800s. But also, there is a channel that I got to watch. I actually watched this channel on my antenna. So it was a free channel, but I think like if you're gonna stream, you may have to pay like a couple dollars a month or something. But it's called Demand Africa. And they have a series of documentaries where they actually go through the whole history of Africa, about how Africa started.
That's
About,
dope.
yeah, it's so dope. They talk about Shaka Zulu, and they talk about all of these other powerful people that really shaped Africa. Africa is a beautiful place, super rich in culture, even though what they went through, So I learned so much just from watching this channel. So I really, really like that. I don't have any physical books to share, but there are a lot of books out there. If you just, get online and look up honoring the ancestors, African American, honoring the ancestors, hoodoo. I found a lot of books that are filled with prayers, with chants, with hymns, and that's what it really was in the African culture. It was a lot of singing, a lot of, that ratchet dancing and and turning up. It was a lot of that. So you can find books that will actually help you understand how can you honor those ancestors. And matter of fact, I'm sorry, let me pull this up real quick because I do want to share the title of this one book. I haven't had the chance to read it myself, but it's called The Earth and the Ancestors, Ancestral Veneration Prayers.
Nice.
I found it on Amazon. So again, that's what I've been finding a lot of, is that these are, it's all about prayers and music that you can speak and that you can pray to honor your ancestors. So I absolutely love that. And I found many, many books on that. So do your research and have fun. Have fun.
Absolutely.
What about you, Connor? What resources and influences can you offer?
So AB and I both have the exact same book, which is Honoring Your Ancestors.
Because it's a good
Definitely,
book.
it's an excellent book. I think if you wanted to start out anywhere with a book, this is probably the book I would recommend you start off with. It has a lot of great content in it. And if you're looking to be inspired by other content creators, there are many others. I'm going to see if I can link a couple YouTube channels down below that have ancestral talks, things like that. Usually these are going to be like witchcraft or pagan related. For example, the first one that I came across is the Norse witch. Their name is Bentha. And they actually do a good overview on ancestral veneration on their channel, but I'll like provide some links down at the bottom for other resources. And continuing with the theme of research, which is always very important.
Yeah. Because I always
as
like to say, don't take our word for it. Do your
yes,
research and follow up on what we say. Yeah.
absolutely, this is your path, not ours. I'm not going to walk for you. You have to walk yourself. Sorry about that. But
That was violent.
I know, right? I
this is your
know.
path. What are you doing here?
That's your path, not ours.
I'm not responsible for you. I'm joking.
Oh my
Okay.
God.
But learning more about your ancestors, looking at like historical or anthropological information about like,
Yes.
how they live their life. So for example, like I received a new deck of oracle cards, which was the Druid Plant Oracle deck, which I love. And in it, it has historical information. And I learned that a plant called meadowsweet was commonly used for like burials, funerals, for celebrations, things like that. So it was a very common plant that was used to like give as offerings or to burn as whatever. So it was very commonly used. And now I've adopted, I was able to get my hands on some meadowsweet, and now I use that when I'm working with my ancestors, specifically that are Gaelic ancestors. I'll be like, here's some meadowsweet. I got that. Here's a whiskey, meadowsweet. maybe if I find like, you know, piece of bread, something like that. Definitely bread with butter on it. That's important.
Mm.
With butter on it. Butter's huge. So most definitely that. But
Yeah.
definitely don't shirk your research duties
Mhm.
on your ancestors' cultures. That's, I
Yes.
think, the most important part.
And it's fun. I think it's fun to learn and
Absolutely.
just discover different things. So yeah, knock
Yes.
yourself out.
Watch a shit ton of documentaries. I love
That's right.
documentaries. I
That's
like reading
right.
books, but I love documentaries more.
Yes. Yeah, because you can really feel that passion and like that emotion from people
Yes.
that like experience, whatever. And yeah, so I love documentaries.
And you get that visualization that you don't normally get. You can
Yeah.
see them wearing their traditional clothing. You can
Yes.
see the environment, what it was like, and
Yep.
you can really get a sense of what it was like to be them at that period in time.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, which can always help with the collection.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Collection.
What about
Have
you,
you,
AB? I
baby?
know that.
Come on, AV.
I cannot wait you, please.
I know,
So,
right?
on my end, yeah, certainly, honoring the your ancestors by Mallory Badua. I think that it was a wonderful book, and I think that for beginner levels is fundamental because it explains like how to begin without giving you a specific tradition. Obviously
Mhm.
she touched upon hers, but it says pretty much, hey, this is a good way to get started, but do your research. As we keep saying, your research is important. On top of this one, I do have this one that I'm reading right now, Veneration Rise of Curanderismo by Erica Buenaflor, if you guys can see it. Of course, curanderismo, this one in particular, goes upon mostly Mexican traditions, very very specific to that area. And I do feel that, of course, we Latinos share some elements, but this one is very, very specific for that tradition. So I want to reemphasize that if anything, I'm trying to get a view of a more Mesoamerican practice and not necessarily so European inspired.
Mhm.
But yeah, that on that side. And also,
Cool.
right now, I finished Conjuring the Calabash by Maria
Yes.
Gomani. Well, Maria Kael Jama Gomani.
Ooh, that
And
sounds so sexy.
that is a
Ooh.
big, big. Actually, let me see if you guys can see it over here.
Yes.
And this book actually goes more over hoodoo, but the very beginning of the book touch upon ancestor veneration and how it's fundamental for hoodoo practice
Awesome.
and how to venerate, and practically give you a few recipes on how to connect with your ancestors. So,
Yes.
yeah, that one is very hoodoo focused as well. So, um, what I'm trying to say is that ancestral veneration, there's multiple ways to do so, many routes according to who
Mhm.
you are and where your family come from. Don't
Yes.
be scared of reading about it.
Absolutely. And the
Yeah.
other thing is that like you don't have to be like practicing these traditional religions or anything like that to practice ancestral veneration. It is so
Yeah.
common that you'll likely find it in pretty much every single religion in some
Yes.
way, shape, or form. So this is something that is universally believed in by religious human beings.
Yes, if
Yes.
anything, I will say, you want to start, get a
Mm-hmm.
candle, get a few photos of your ancestors, or
Mhm.
Yes.
even write the name of your ancestors down in
Yeah.
a piece of paper and begin in that way. Ancestors, here I am. I want to get to connect more with you. I remember you. Um, this,
Yeah.
get close to me. Indicate me. How would you like me to venerate you?
Yes.
Mhm.
And that is a very practical way to get started. Um,
Yes. I think that should be everyone's homework
mhm,
is to just, start a I don't know, an altar or something small where you can start to honor your ancestors after
yes.
doing some research. So,
Absolutely. And
absolutely.
that can even be like the mantelpiece or a shelf with all
Mm-hmm.
your photos on it. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be like a standalone thing. You know, many families will have their family photos in one place in the house, or at least maybe like consolidate them. And then you can place a candle there, place a small tray for food, and you're pretty much good to go.
I think that the only rule that I could see repeated across the board is that don't mix photo of those that are alive with those that
Yes.
passed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't do that. Yeah, I don't do
The
very
that
dead
either.
separate from the living.
Yeah.
detrimental point because yeah, no, don't mix the living with those that passed. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Don't do it. So like for me, I have a picture of my grandmother um on my altar, and it's an actual picture. And then I have a my grandfather's obituary. So that's a good, if you have obituaries, put those on your altar and honor those. So wow, this was great. I really enjoyed this topic. I'm super excited that we have listeners and people are out there listening and watching us. We hope that we are inspiring you. That's always our main goal is to just inspire and educate. So, but again, very important that everyone does their own research. We are here if you have any questions. Contact us on social media, and we are, here to listen and, to just share anything that our listeners want us to share on the next episode. So, again, thanks for being here with us. I hope that you all enjoyed listening to us as much as we enjoyed sharing. So, big blessings and
And
Happy
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 witching.
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 Bye
Good night,
bye.
everyone.